Greetings, viewers. So this is just to announce Uplink 6 is now out, and it's focused on one of the classics of video game culture, the original and very best shooter to this day. There's not a single shooter that's yet surpassed it, and that's Remedy's Max Payne from 2001. Classic tale of an undercover cop driven to the absolute limit and fights a one-person battle against corporate greed and takes down one of the biggest transnational corporations on the planet by the very end. Why this game and why is it worth talking about today? A couple of reasons. One is Max Payne deserves some wider credit as the very first video game to actually transform video games into a transnational art form. And what I mean by that was there were previous video games that were extremely good and had moments of greatness in them. Moments of the Nintendo games, moments of certain franchises, moments of certain games were intermittently rose to that level of greatness, but couldn't quite hold it together and didn't change their feel. They couldn't match, say, the great works of art coming from film, television, other forms of media. 2001, Max Payne, that changes. This is the first video game which is the complete package. Every single aspect of its production is suffused with brilliance, energy, and creativity, dynamism. It all works together, and it transforms its feel. And it continues to be the single best shooter ever made. To this day, not a single shooter has come close to matching what it's doing. So there's a whole history of this, and we can just talk about why it's such a great work of art. But what I'm more interested for this video is explaining why Max Payne is actually relevant. Why is a work of art from 2001 somehow relevant to 2019, about to become 2020? There's a simple reason. The fundamental story of Max Payne is actually not a crime thriller. No. Max Payne is not a crime thriller. Max Payne is a capitalism thriller. It's the first video game to get it, to get the fact that capitalism isn't this system that has criminals. Capitalism is crime. It is crime. It is crime to its very core. It is organized criminality. It always has been. It always will be. It's the extraction of labor from us, the working people, so that a small elite can do whatever. This is fundamentally broken. This is fundamentally wrong. Nothing will ever make this right. As long as that extraction goes on and people are oppressed and exploited, they don't get the full value of their labor through this market, there will be no justice, and we'll have terrible problems as a species. The first video game to get this right. Capitalism is crime. It's not some blurring of definitions. There's not some pure noble market waiting to be discovered and rescued. The human face of socialism. Ah, yes, the human face of capitalism. There's just crime. Okay? There's just crime. That was the great insight. Now, the flip side of that insight is Max Payne was stunningly brilliant about predicting something about the next 20 years of social history. Adorno has a great line where he says at one point, in aesthetic theory, the work they'd never had time to finish because he passed away too soon. There's a line where he says, the great works of art wait. And what he meant by that is that great works of art, they're not fully understood in their time. There's this gap. The audience has to figure out what they truly mean. And then the greatness manifests itself. It's a politics of interpretation or appreciation or respect, or something happens so we understand what's going on there. Same thing is true of Max Payne. The people who studied and loved video games back then all appreciated it, and there's a generation raised in Max Payne. My generation passed from the scene. Young people today generally don't know. They've heard about some of the sequels. They haven't played the original or seen it directly. But still, there is something about the original work of art which couldn't manifest itself until today. And that's because of a level of storytelling which no one at the time understood. And even I didn't get this at the time. I wrote about Max Payne when it first came out in 2002. I tried to write about it 2002, 2003. And I actually, for the article, I went back and looked at what I'd written and realized I only got like maybe 20% of what was going on there. I'd missed a lot because it was too soon, it was too close, and I didn't have the tools. And in the article in my Patreon site, Uplink number 6, goes into more details about what the work of art does. But I'll give you the short version of the story. Max Payne tells you a credible story of transnational insurrection against capital. And by insurrection, I'm using that word very, very specifically. Insurrection is not movement. It's not revolution. It's not transformation. It's not transformation. It's the beginning of those things. It's the beginning. It's the kicking off process. The first moment where something breaks, something happens, and something new starts to happen, and it turns into a mass project. If we think about the politics of the 21st century, this has been the central lesson since 2001. We haven't needed leaders. We don't need leaders in that sense. No. What we need are insurrectionists. That one person to step up at the right place at the right time, Gordon Freeman style, and crowbar the future open, and then something else happens. Mustafa Nayyem, that Facebook post that detonated the Ukrainian Revolution at the end of 2013, famously. Mohamed Bouazizi in Tunisia detonates a revolution which is still going on in the Arab world, still going on in Sudan, still going on in Algeria, still going on in Beirut, still going on in Iraq, still going strong. There's been no end to the Arab Spring. No, this is a generational, this is the labor of decades of struggle. It opened up something in the future that keeps on, keeps on, keeps on. Greta Thunberg, the latest example of this, most obviously. One person stepped up, and now this global connection, this chain of things happening in all directions, mobilizing the power of the digital commons, the transnational media, the transnational commons, in new and surprising ways that we don't have answers. We're not very aware of how these things work. Those of us I'm a professor, so I study these things from an academic standpoint. Even I don't fully understand them. I wouldn't claim to speak for them. I try to keep up with them and understand what they're doing, and doing the little bit that I can do as a human being to help out the forces of planetary salvation as opposed to the capitalism forces of planetary destruction. So Max Payne provides a template for this, a blueprint, a model of the insurrections of the future, a place where we can kind of see the future being created.